Welcome, everyone that's just coming in. I'm Claudia Lash, and we are doing today paper piecing, foundation paper piecing, using freezer paper, and hopefully you can watch this. I don't know if you'll be able to sew along while I'm doing this, but what I will tell you is on my website, prestoavenuedesigns.com, there is a PDF which looks like this. If you go to the website under Learning, and then go to Tutorials. Hi, Kay. And under Tutorials, there is some one that says Foundation Paper Piecing. And it's 3 pages. There's lots of pictures, though. So if you want to print that off, then you'll have it for yourself to use as much as you need. But that's basically what we're going to talk about today. And if you miss something, you can always go back to that Foundation Paper Piecing PDF. So anyway, I use these same leaves. I use the same leaves on the Ferris wheel quilts too. They always use the same pattern. I always use darks and lights, greens. So it's something that I can do and have 4 or 5 leaves sitting somewhere, and then when I'm ready to make a flower hug, I can pull a flower out, put it together, stick a couple leaves on. Every once in a while, then I have to go and make a bunch of leaves. So when I'm ready to make leaves, and Therese says that she put several leaves on her, she made sort of a round table topper with grandmother's flowers in the middle, and then she put leaves on the outside. You'll have to, I think it's on my website, I think under Quilts by Others. It's really cool. So, if you would like to learn how to do this, the first thing you need to do is take your pattern, and this technique works on other things too. I'm just using this as an example. You can use the same technique if you're doing I don't know, if you're doing a mosquito. I wouldn't want to paper piece a mosquito, but if you do, you could use the pattern, and then what you have to do first is you have to make a freezer paper copy of your pattern. And so what I usually do is I take 1 piece of freezer paper and lay it on top of my pattern, and then use a pencil and just trace it. When I trace it, I always trace the outside 1/4 inch seam allowance. After you do that, you take the pattern and you lay it on. You can lay up to 6 or 8 pieces of freezer paper. I only have 4 here. But I lay it on so that the sticky side is up. Is that correct? Yes. Yes. Shiny side is up. A sticky side, it's a shiny side. And then I usually put a staple, or sometimes I will take the hot iron, and if you just touch your hot iron to the paper in a couple of places, that will hold it together. Then you're ready to make a few more copies, since you don't want to have to draw or trace all these. So you go to your sewing machine and take your thread out, and on mine, I have to take my bobbin case out, and then just stitch around on all the lines on this copy. As you stitch around them all, you're going to make holes in all of your papers. So that will be your template. So after you stitch around it, and I do stitch around the outside seam line too, then you pull it off, you pull them all apart so that you have several. And when you're done, you have something that looks like this, where I don't know if you can see, I don't have the pencil lines, but I have a what is a line there from my sewing machine. So that's my pattern. Oh, and after you make your copies, you cut them out with scissors. I cut them out kind of close to this the outer seam line, but I don't cut them out exactly on that. I just cut them maybe a 16th or a little bit outside it. Because you want to make sure that when you put your fabrics on, that you've got enough to cover that seam line. All right. Then you lay it down. You put numbers on your paper. So then you're ready to go to part 2. Part 2 is getting your fabric ready. Now, if you're just making one, say you're doing something like this block. You don't need to probably make a lot. Oh, can we not see that one? How about this block? Well, that's a 9 pad. So here's one down here. If you're making something like this, and you're only going to make one block, then I wouldn't go to all of this trouble that I'm talking about right now. I would just find some scraps that look big enough, and you're going to be fine. But if you're making a block where, well, in this case, I'm going to need a lot of pieces, and for my leaves, I'm going to need fabric that's big enough to go with my biggest section. So whatever you're making, you're going to find that if you're making something that has, well, like this, it has a green and it's going to have to be this big, you can take a piece of paper and you can just draw that piece on there. I used freezer paper here. And then add a 1/2 inch all the way around. You want to include your seam allowance when you draw it. And then add a 1/2 inch all the way around, and then you're going to have a template for what size you're going to need for your paper piecing later on for the fabric. So, in this pattern, I don't know if I give you a template or not. I'm going to have to look that up. I think I do. But anyway, for paper piecing, once I know how big the biggest piece is, then I just make several freezer paper templates. And then I lay out a piece of, or 2 pieces of fabric. And you need lights and you need darks. I think you need a few more lights than you do darks. But I will lay out several greens, and then I take my freezer paper templates and I lay them on top. And now here is not going to work, but it's okay. We can go on to here. We're going to pretend that we have a whole. Let me take this to the ironing board. Can you see my iron over here now? Okay, so I'm going to take this and stick it right next door. Scooch my iron. Is that good? All right. So, then I just, with a hot, dry iron, I will make lots of, I'm sticking that one under here. It's not very good, but you can line up as many leaves as you want. And then, here I have usually I use my big rotary cutter. But then I just go, shh, and then I move it over here, shh, and then I move it over here, shh, and just go right along, and I end up with lots of pieces. Let me show you my pieces. I gotta keep this up. Hi, Sue. Okay, so here are my pieces. A few darks, and they're in a bag. Then I do a few lights. I like a lot of variety, but hey. In order to make one leaf, you need, I think, 5 darks and 4 lights. I believe that's what it is. So if you're making 2 leaves, you would only need, 10 darks and maybe 8 lights. So you don't need to go crazy, but I make these a lot, and so I'd like to have all these left over. Or so I don't have to make them all the time. Okay, can we see that? Oh, yeah. Close them down to me so that you can see them better. All right, so we have our pattern. We have our fabrics to use. And I think, where did I do with my, oh well. So we're about ready to go ahead and do some real life sewing here. Now, are there any questions? Am I going too quickly? If there's any questions, let me know. Because I do this so much, and sometimes I have a tendency to forget that maybe I might be going a little too quickly. Are you sure? Well, I guess, yeah, I can see. All right, well, we're going to move on then. We are finally ready to sew and to make a leaf. So, the first thing we have to do is we look at our pattern, and there's a 1 there. That's for the very first piece. And I start mine with a dark. You can start with whatever you like, but I always like to start with the dark and end with the dark. So, now, because we're frugal with our things, if I used a great big piece here, there'd be a lot of waste. See how big this piece is going to be for that little tiny one? That's going to be kind of big. So what I usually do is I find one of these, if I've got an extra somewhere that's got a piece cut off, that's what I use. So, for piece number 1, you're going to lay your fabric right sides down, back sides up. I don't know if you can see this very well, but I've got the freezer paper pattern is on the back. Now this is a huge piece. See how much room I have? All I need to make sure is that I have at least 1/4 inch from this. I don't know if you can even see this dotted line. Here's a dotted line right there. Or here's a bumpy line where the stitches were. So I've got 1/4 inch, and I've got plenty here, plenty there. I'm going to take this to the ironing board, and I'm going to press this down. Well, Miss Shannon is watching. Hi, Sherry. Okay. So I'm going to, can they see down here? Can you see this here? I'm going to touch this or press this with a dry iron that I hope is pretty hot. Oh, and one thing, this pattern has been used, I don't know how many times. You can't, I have used them 4 or 5 or, maybe 6, 8, 10 times. As long as they're still sticking, they're okay. They're useful. So, now we are ready to put on part 2. What I do is, you need a card or a heavy piece of cardboard, and I lay it on that line, which should make the line so you can see it better. And I'm going to pull the paper back. Pull the freezer paper back, leave the fabric down there. Now that's not exactly 1/4 of an inch. I can make it exactly 1/4 of an inch because I have one of these rulers. This is an 1/4 ruler. I really like them. They come in 6 and 12-inch sizes. I just have the 6-inch, but and it does fine. If you don't have one of these rulers, the world is not lost. You can always use a regular ruler. Where's that ruler? There's another ruler. Oh. You can use another ruler, any ruler that has a 1/4 inch line on it. So if you don't have the 1/4, just stick a ruler and line it up with that 1/4 inch line. All right. Now we're going to take out this color. And the next fabric that I'm going to put on should be a light fabric. So I've got a light fabric. It's important as you go along that you notice which way you want your piece to be sitting. If you want the pointy part to be up at the top, then you have to look at your pattern, at the next piece that your pattern that's coming up. I don't know if you can see this, so I'm going to try to make this bigger. This is the problem when you're not. Maybe if I use a marker so people can see this. Okay. You can see that. Our next piece number 2, looks like this. See how it kind of looks like it's a triangle with a point at the top? Think of a mountain with the top, the small part at the top. So, I am going to put this next to my fabric that's already there. I'm going to line him up, and I'm going to line him up so that if you just look at this, you can see there's my triangle, here's my fabric. My fabric will cover everything. So now, I just hold this. Their raw edges are lined up, and I go to my sewing machine. Hi, Linda. And I lay this, or I stick this under here, and luckily you will probably not have a thing in your way, but I'm hoping that I can show you how to sew this. And then you put your foot. Oh, did I do it? It didn't?
Touch it.
I did touch it.
Okay.
Now hide it. Oh well, that's the best I can do. Is that as clear as we can do? Oh well. The main thing is here, I have my 1/4 foot on, my 1/4 inch foot. I am looking right at I'm looking right here because that's where my seam is going to come, right down there. You do not need to make your stitch length short. You can use a regular stitch length. Sometimes my default on the machine is 2.50. I think that's a little big. So a lot of times I will take it down to a 2.4, but you can even take it down to a 2.0. Remember, when you're doing paper piecing, if you take it down too small, then they're a doozy to get out if you might make a mistake. Now I've got mine, this is 2.0, and I'm going to sew right along the edge of that freezer paper. Just right along the very edge. And I can go past it a little bit. Pull it out. Okay, now I am going to go over here. It will go over there. Okay. And I'm going to flip my paper back. And I'll flip my fabric over. I usually take my finger and just give it a little press, but something to hold it because I jump up and go to the ironing board because, oh, my goodness. Really, I don't jump up, but I get up and I press the top. Okay, I press it on the fabric side, and then I press it on the paper side. And just because hold on. Here, let's put this out of the way someplace so that I'm not fitting. My studio could stand to be a few hundred square feet bigger, but it isn't. Okay, back to where I was. I'm ready to go on, but just because I don't like working with all this extra, sometimes I will go and just get rid of some of this extra. And it might be easier for you to see that way too. But don't get rid of anything that we haven't. Maybe you should just leave that for right now. All right. So we've got piece 1, we've got piece 2 on. So we lay it back down. Take your card. Lay the card on the line between 2 and 3. Pull the freezer paper back. Fold back. And there's a lot of stuff, a lot of fabric there, but we're going to cut it off at the 1/4 inch line. So we lay our ruler there and we trim. Pitch that away, or if you like to save it, take your card out. We're ready to add piece number 3, which is going to be a dark. Now, the question again is, if I lay this dark on here, let me show you this line. My friction pen is deciding this. Okay, here's my line. Now if I lay this on like this, like we did the light one, and I look at this, I'm going to show you up here. Can you see where, there's my line, here's my new fabric, the big end is at the bottom, the big end needs to be at the top. So that's not going to work. So we're going to have to lay our fabric top side down or pointy side down. And then, because the triangle is pointy side down, we lay our fabric pointy side down, we lay it right side up, and we lay this on top of the right side of the other piece. So now we're going to sew again from the top to the bottom. We're going to sew on the right side, just right next to that freezer paper. Go past the seam line. You don't have to go past too far. Brenda Crooks is watching. Hi, Brenda. Okay. Turn your, once you get it sewn, you're going to fold the fabric back over. Give it a little finger press. Jump up, or if you're one of those people that's got a little bit more rib, you're going to go right over to your ironing board and you're going to press this. So I'm going to go to my ironing board. Press on the fabric side, press on the paper side. Now I've got 3 pieces on there. I have found that I can do 4 to 6 of these leaves and just sort of chain sew them through the machine. But for this deal, I figured it was better to just do 1 at a time. So we take we're at number 3. We're going to lay the card back down. We're going to fold and fold back. Use my add a quarter ruler, trim, and ready to sew on another light piece. And shouldn't try to sew them on when they're all bent like that, but that's true. Once again, I always look at my triangle here. This time my triangle, the pointy side is at the top. So I want to make sure the new piece that I add, the pointy side, is at the top. And the big bottom is at the bottom. And we're going to go, I just hold them together with my fingers until I get to the sewing machine. Once you get a routine going here, you'll find that it's, what are the, on this one I've got the bottom a little off. See, I don't know if you can see here, but the light piece is just sticking out a little hair more than 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to leave it because I'm sure it's going to be fine. This is going to be inside, so nobody's going to know. That's a little bigger. Well, and the good thing about this, and fold back, press, the good thing about this, doing it this way, and one of the things that I remember that Judy Matheson said was, if you have a design or a block where you want certain pieces not to, the seam allowances not to be going, like on these, it doesn't matter where the seam allowance is going. Seam allowances don't show. But if you were making a star or something and you have a light piece here, you don't want that to show, you can, with this technique, turn your seam allowance whatever way you'd like. So that's another good thing to think about when you're doing this. So we've sewn. Now it's time to, once again, fold back. Now sometimes you have to make sure that you check on where you're at on your place, because this piece number 4 is pretty big. But if I cut him right here, I would have a big empty spot. So you always look and make sure that your piece is covering every section, every part of the section. So we're going to fold back the paper, trim, stick a new dark on, and this time, again, we look at the piece that we're replacing, and the piece has the big bottom is at the top, so I have to have it like this. Now on this one, I think it's a petite, it really doesn't matter, but we want the big bottom at the top. So I'm going to lay this down right at the edge, and I'm going to stitch. Okay, and I think this is probably the last one I will stitch, and then I will show you what we do next. Once you get into the routine, that's over there. Okay, fold him back, fold the paper back, and we're going to press, press. Each time you do the same thing, you trim, let's see, the first thing you do is you fold the paper back, you fold, you trim, you add your new piece on, and then you stitch. Then you just go back, press, and you fold the paper back, like over and over and over until you get. When you get to the end little guy, he's another small piece. So this is a good spot if you've got a little piece that you left over that's dark. You can put that on. So let's pretend. Oh, here's their question. Like this technique doesn't show through the paper, but still exactness of. Yes, it is. It's as exact as the paper piecing, where you have to actually take out the paper or take off all the paper. Here's one that is done, but not finished. Everything has been sewn, and it's all just stuck to this freezer paper. So what I usually do, and I don't have one thing I did not get. See if I ever did that square ruler, that would probably work. That small, yeah. I usually go to my big cutting board with my big rotary cutter. But I'm going to do it right here. I am going to trim this at the outside seam line, which I can see on here. I don't know how well you can see it. I usually take a ruler and I just kind of use the ruler and my rotary cutter to trim right along the edge. And I'm going to do this with. Now, if you're really good, maybe you can do a curve without having a ruler there. Or you can always use those things called scissors. But since it's freezer paper, don't use your good scissors. You might not be happy with that. But I just take and trim right along the outside seam line, and I usually use my bigger rotary cutter. Okay, that's good enough. So we've got this trimmed, and now we're ready to move on. If you want to piece this into something, I would hold on, and if you're going to piece this into another piece of fabric, I would leave the paper on until you get it pieced. But for my technique, for what I'm doing, at least on most of my things, is I'm going to applique this. So I'm going to pull the paper off, nice and neat, and then I can use this again sometime. And then I go and get some, oh, got a mess here. Got it, wrong box. Okay, then I go and get some interfacing that's fusible on one side. The kind that I like is called Sheer Tailor. It's a Pellon product. You can get it at most places. It's fusible on one side, and it's just a nice weight. So, I get some Sheer Tailor, and I lay it over my pattern, and I make a piece of interfacing, or I trace it so I have a piece of interfacing the same size as my leaf. That includes the seam allowance. So I'm going to lay this interfacing with this has sort of the fusible side you can feel. It's sort of a bubbly, so you can tell it's the fusible side. So I lay it against my leaf, right side, or the right side of the leaf goes to the fusible side of the interfacing. Then, and I don't think I'll do this right now, but then I just stitch right around the edge as if where the seam line would be. I can use my 1/4-inch foot. You can stitch on either side. You want to stitch, doesn't matter. I stitch totally around it. I don't have any that show that, but you stitch totally around the edge, and then flip him right side out, and sort of, before you flip it, in order to flip him right side out, you have to make a little snip. So I've stitched all the way around, and then I just take my scissors and I cut the fusible in the center, and then I turn it right side out. And you don't want to press this with your iron too much, unless you have maybe a pressing sheet or something you can put it on. I just use my fingers and get it pressed nice, and then it's ready to put onto wherever you're putting it. If you're putting it onto a flat thing, a flat background, you do have to stitch it down eventually, but you can use your iron and fuse it according to the directions. I use steam, and I give it a good solid pressing. And if it would start to come up, you can always use a little glue, but you do need to stitch this down with some sort of stitching. So, let's see. Anything else? Tell us again where we can download the pattern, please. Okay, you can download the pattern from Presto Avenue Designs. You can download either, any of my patterns are download version, but you can use this technique on this pattern. This is Ferris Wheel Flowers. This is Flower Hugs. Now you can use this this freezer paper technique on doing the dancing barns. I don't have the quilt in here, but Show Your Heart is a pattern of mine, which this section, I don't know if they can see that. No, you can. Now, this is a mistake block some time ago, but the Show Your Heart quilts have 4 sections on each block that are done with freezer paper piecing, and this is the section. There's only like 3 pieces, but again, it's really quick to do 3 pieces to make your corner sections. The website, www.prestoavenuedesigns.com. Go to for the tutorial, for the pages. Okay. Okay. If you're interested in having all of this written out for you, so that you can practice over and over. Go to Learning on my website, PrestoAvenueDesigns.com. Under Learning, go to Tutorials. And under Tutorials, you will see something that says Freezer Paper Piecing or Foundation Paper Piecing. And you can download that and you're set to go. Okay, now any other questions? I think maybe I have it covered. We are going to be, since we have 1 or 2 minutes, we are going to be next week. Is it next week? Well, on the 10th of September, which is a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we are going to be live. Hopefully, it will be very smooth and professional looking. We're going to be live at the Great Wisconsin Boat Show. We are going to be from 10 to 12, the vendors will be on. So we are going to be, I don't know, showing quilts, whatever else we can think to do in 2 hours' time. I'm hoping that some of my friends come by and say hi so that I don't just sit there and wait for people to come by and say hi. So all the patterns are going to be on a special sale. I forget what it is, but we're going to have something special. And at the show, you'll be able to see 91 other vendors and quilts and specials. It should be really interesting. It's a virtual quilt show. And I don't see any other questions. I want to thank you all for stopping by. If you have anything else you're interested in working on, let me know. Or if you have any great ideas, that would be good too. I have some other ideas for our live videos, but I can't do them until after this quilt because I might stress my vice president to the point of throwing his hands up and saying, "I'm done with this job." Okay. I think that's all for today. Thanks for watching again. PrestoAvenueDesigns.com. Oh, goodness. Okay, again.